Oh, that was a fast train. Blink, I'm here. Welcome to week 13 in History of Psychology, where we're taking on chapter 12 here, Gestalt Psychology. Now, again, we have a very, very strong German influence on the history of psychology. This philosophical, theoretical model that's sort of jumbled together, almost like the humanists kind of, jumbled that together. Here we have the jumbling together of different ideas that we all categorize as Gestalt. And it was a short-lived school of thought for someone to be a Gestalt psychologist, per se. That sort of had its day and is beyond. However, Gestalt, just like humanist psychology, Gestalt continues to have a philosophical impact on the world of psychology. It's just, that is what it's done. So it has a lasting legacy of something important to consider when we're studying the human experience. And our first quiz, the first activity, which is a quiz, I'm asking you to explain that philosophy. Now, that philosophy is encompassed in a phrase, in a statement that says, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We can take apart the human psyche. We can take apart the human experience and analyze its pieces. What Gestalt brought to the table was that when we put those pieces together again, there's a certain synergy that expands beyond just the additive quality of those pieces. There's something more. There's something more to what's there. Now, one of the principal ways in which we demonstrate this is through visual and sensory perception. That we see things and we may add more to that than is really there. And the best example of that I can think of is the constellations. Now, we just went through a beautiful eclipse. I got to see it from Greenville out in a big wide open area. It was very, very cool. But when we look at the night sky and we see the placement of stars, we not only, almost intuitively, we not only see those individual dots, but we tend to see shapes. We connect the dots, essentially, and we look at something, and almost automatically we want to add some meaning to those placement of dots. Meaning there's a picture up there. And we do this all the time. We do this when we see objects in the world that seem to have a face to them. That whole concept. There's where we add more than just the basic image that's there. And our perceptual process, Gestalt perception, is really a fundamental way in which we perceive the world. We add meaning all the time. We're searching for meaning all the time. So we have the quiz that asks you to explain the concept that embodies Gestalt psychology. Essentially, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. In the assignment, I'm asking you for examples of two things related to Gestalt perception rules. The first is perceptual constancy. Now, constancy means we understand the world of objects to be stable. And even though objects might move in relation to the light reflecting off that object and its presentation on our retina might change the shape of that object as it's presented in our retina, we know that it remains in its original shape. So if I took this piece of paper and I put it like this, okay, but then I change it like this, okay, even though right now this paper is impacting your retina different than when it was like this, you know that it hasn't changed. It's changed its orientation in space, but the fundamental quality of this has not changed. Now, it seems self-explanatory, but we rely on this process in order to understand that our world remains constant and predictable. So I want you to provide not that example. I want you to provide another example of size, shape, and or color consistency. Okay? So you have to look those terms up, find an example, post a picture example in your paper, posted right in Word. The other one is perceptual organization, and this is the way we group things together, very similar to the constellation story that I just told you about. We'll put things together, we'll see them as connected, even though those things aren't connected. When things are close together, we tend to group them together. That's called proximity. When we have, let's say, the dotted outline of a letter, figuratively speaking, you haven't drawn the letter because it's just a dotted outline, but you will see those dots as a continuity, making, let's say, the number 0. Okay? So that's called continuity. We're going to see a continuous shape, even though it's being broken up by those dots. Similarity is the quality of the things that are the same. Let's say things that are the same color, we'll tend to group those things together. It's a perceptual process that's, has to do with racial prejudice, to tell you the truth. It relates to that. When we group individuals by skin color and then draw assumptions about that group being the same, that they're all the same, every member of that group is the same, that's when we're committing prejudice. Closure is when, similar to the continuity, we would tend to see simple objects. And let's say, I didn't prepare to have a slide for this, it would have been useful, but in the course book, there's certainly, we tend to see things as simple objects. So, the moon, the eclipse, what a great example of this. When, if you had your glasses on and you're watching the moon creep up over the sun, you did not perceive that the sun was slowly being eaten away and the only part of the sun that was left was that decreasingly sized crescent. What you saw was another object, another round object on top of another one, and as they got over each other, you assumed one was in back of the other. It's actually one of the perceptual tools that we use to develop a sense of depth perception. But when we look at closure, we saw that crescent, and you could almost, even when we're looking at the crescent moon, because of the stage that the moon is in, we imagine the rest of the planet. We see that there's closure. We imagine the rest of the moon. Underneath the eclipse, we imagine the rest of the sun is right there. And we imagine the rest of the moon right there. We don't see those as just a cut. We see the closure of that object as a circle because we know that's what it is. Simplicity, tend to see simple arrangements of things rather than complex arrangement of things. And then the concept of figure ground, which is our ability to see what is the object in the image and what is the background. And this is very well demonstrated by the image that we see sometimes. In one respect, it looks like a vase, but then in another respect, it looks like two faces looking at each other. And when it's the vase, the negative area where the faces would be becomes the background and the vase becomes the foreground. When the vase becomes the background, the faces become the foreground. And you get this sometimes rapid shifting of foreground, background. So I want you to find an example of one of those in the real world. Please don't look up on the web, find me an example of this. I would rather you go out into the world with your camera and find them. They're all over the place. All these perceptual cues are all around us. They're in your house, around me. I can point at various examples right here around my office and studio. They're all around me. These are just going to open your eyes and see where they are. So I'm asking you this week the quiz on explaining the basic principle of Gestalt psychology, and then perceptual constancy and perceptual organization, examples of those, and a little bit of explanation. Tell me what it is. If it's vague, tell me what it is and how you understand this to be an example of either perceptual constancy or perceptual organization. Demonstrate the learning. Don't just put the pictures in there. So you have a title page and then maybe a page for each picture with a little paragraph explaining the picture. So that would be awesome. So okay, that's it for this week. Enjoy the beautiful weather that we're having. Get out there, finish strong. We're approaching the end of our class, and things are going to be coming to a close pretty quick, just a few more weeks. And have a great ending of the semester. End strong, and keep in touch if you have any questions about things that are going on. And have a great week, and I will see you next time.